Welcome, Dr. Nicole Marcione of Sexy Smart Aging to Boss Bitch Radio. I'm very excited to have you here today. I stumbled upon your Facebook page through Amy Porterfield, which is a marketing guru that I believe we both follow. And I was like, oh, I think she'd be wonderful for the podcast. Your website is robust with all things that speak to me and my audience. So I thought I would have you on, but thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me and for reaching out. I love how in these modern times, we can really be able to connect with women and human beings in ways that we never thought possible just a few years ago, really.
Right.
And so to be able to forge new relationships and spread our message and just really build community and sisterhood is what I'm all about. And I just am so excited to be here. I'm really interested in more of your after quote unquote after dark podcast.
Yes.
So I'm
Yeah.
wondering if this one might be one of those. I don't know. We'll see.
I hope so, because I haven't done many of those. Actually, I take that back. I have done a few interviews lately for the After Dark, but I do get some DMs and they're like, hey, when are you bringing those back? When are you bringing those back? So, I know we're going to dive into a lot of what you do and all of the things, but if there's anything that, just is a particular topic that we want to just get juicy on, we can most certainly do that. And this is okay with being an After Dark episode. But I'm very, if you haven't already poked around, everything's very unfiltered, very uncensored, and just like girlfriend chat. So I'm excited to dive in, learn a little bit more about your background and what brought you to where you're at and what you do, so everybody can dive into your world. So can you tell us more about your background, how you came to specialize in helping essentially midlife women in their health and wellness journey?
Yeah. So where do I begin?
I know.
Do we want the long story or the shorter version? So first, I like to just say I am a longevity doctor who helps women in midlife with their sensuality and sexuality, both by blending the science of longevity with the art of sensual living. And why I'm kind of prefacing with that is because when I graduated with my PhD in 2019, I was 44. So I wasn't, really young. I had seen a few things, gone through a few experiences, you might say. And when I came out of that program, I realized I didn't want to go into what a typical trajectory for a person with a PhD would start, in academia, opening a lab, writing grants, doing research, but very few people being able to read about it. And so I really wanted to work with people directly, one-on-one, but still use all the training and information I had. And so as I started, it was really, when I would be working with clients, we would talk about all the typical things, nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress. I like to call those the four big things.
Mm-hmm.
But it gets so boring to talk about that all the time.
Now, was this if you don't mind me interjecting, was this in a clinical setting? Like you had an office and patients would come in?
So I have a PhD, not an MD, so I'm not a clinician. And I was seeing clients in person and online. So it was both. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like everyone was talking about nutrition, exercise, especially within the context of living longer and healthier, because those are important, foundations. But what I realized, especially when my working with women, is that so many of the kind of surface issues were being underlied by heavier issues such as relationships, body image, trauma, guilt, shame, all of these things. And almost every single one, it ended up being around sexuality, around empowerment, around not ever knowing what they desired, or if they did, not ever being able to act upon it because they're getting pulled in so many directions, whether it was motherhood or being a wife or being an employee or having a high powered job or maybe even running their own company. And so what I found is that we would always end up talking about more things that were beneath the surface,
Mhm.
right? Things that aren't usually brought up in the context of living longer, usually, or aging well. And yet, these things are really what are going to help us to live a long life, right? It's how we think of ourselves, how we enjoy, how we are happy with
Mhm.
what our lives are, and not, I like to say, like, not resentful, burnt out, angry, exhausted, or
Right.
fatigued. So that's kind of how I got started in helping midlife women, first with just kind of general aging well processes. But then it took a turn maybe 2 years ago that really started delving into the sensuality and sexuality piece.
I love that. I don't know if you know, but I have a background with sensuality and teaching women how to pole dance for 10 years.
I saw
And
that.
that was what spoke to me when I landed on your website, because I did see the infusion of sensuality, and your pictures on your site are very beautiful and very sensual, and I was like, okay, she gets it. So I got to have her on. But it's very fascinating to me because I started it for fitness, right? Like, oh, I'm
Hmm.
gonna teach these women and like get them in. And I noticed what started happening was major shifts in their life when they stayed with me for quite some time, because my program was not very fitness based. It was very heavy sensual based movement. So it was a lot of, getting in touch with your feminine side and touching your body, and not in being unapologetic, with who you are and how you show up in the world. And so a lot of that uh, prompting was happening during the sessions, right? And so what was happening is women were breaking down after, and they were crying, and they were feeling brave enough to leave abusive situations or marriages where they were unhappy. And so I started to see how uniquely tied the sensuality piece was to their regular life. And
Yeah.
it was amazing. And I knew, I mean, I have the chills right now just talking about it, but I know how much it impacted me as a woman in learning how to dance, sensually, and move, and being in touch with my feminine side and embracing that and not being embarrassed by that, and how much it impacted me as a woman to where I am now. I strongly and firmly believe that it had so much to do with 10 years of teaching sensual movement, really.
Yeah.
And being very aware of how it changed me when I walked into the everyday world.
100%. I love that. And I too am a big person in somatics and body work and movement and how we hold so much in our body. And to be able to move that through, and there's various modalities of movement. It could be sensual pole dancing, it could be simply something like shaking or voicing, or some people get that in running. There are so many ways of doing it, but to really, I love that there's so many more conversations about how do we use our body in a way to move our trauma, to move our grief, to move our guilt, to move our shame through and out, as opposed to holding it in, which we all know, ends up manifesting in disease
Right.
or autoimmune things or weight gain or weight loss. Like, so our physical bodies are a manifestation of, all the things we've experienced. And then also, I'm a big believer in the experiences of the generations that we have had before us that we now carry in our own
Mhm.
DNA. And, so much of this, my scientific training and that background didn't talk about any of this.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's so important. And so I love that so many more women are talking about this at a very high level, because I'm sure you'd agree with me. So many of the voices that are talking on longevity and health and disease are a bunch of like midlife old dudes.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And like, we are not smaller men. We are not like human beings that just happen to weigh less than men. So maybe we do the same things, like fast the same or work out
Right.
the same, or, you know, and so many of these voices are acting as, you know, gospel and
Mm-hmm.
God, and like being observed. And then so many women are wondering, like, well, why isn't this working for me? Like, I've been fasting 16 to 18 hours and I haven't lost any weight. And it's like, but, and I also like had abuse growing up, or I had miscarriages, or I had, you know, bad relationships, or whatever it is. We don't look at any of that and translate it to like, oh, maybe this is why I don't feel good. It's not because
Wow.
you're not eating enough kale or doing enough um, burpees or yoga. It's because we're ignoring all of these things that got us to this point. And then, yeah, so I just, sorry, I'm like on the little soapbox about this.
No, it's okay. I'm often on the soapbox of just preaching to women that they need to do many, many things. But one of them, in fact, the original one of the original names for the podcast, when I was toying with what I was going to name it, was front burner bitch, because it was constantly, I feel like my work in fitness has not just been like handing people meal plans and telling them how to exercise. It's been like, let's move you from the back burner and bring you to the front burner, where you prioritize yourself, your pleasure, your body, your desires, what you want. You know, breaking the people pleaser habits that have been ingrained from generations.
Yeah.
And it's refreshing that other people are doing this work too, and it's obviously more prevalent now, but it still feels like there's so much work to do with
Oh,
it, right?
for sure. Our
Because
work is not done at
our
all.
work is not done. I still have women in my DMs, in my emails that come through our studio that are still in that mindset, and they are just really struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it, you said something that struck me and I was going to say, and now I forget, but, oh goodness, it'll come to me.
Yeah.
But, it's so important. Oh, I know what I was going to say. And you can let me know, like, from your own experience
Mhm.
working with so many women in these various arenas. But what I found is, once someone starts realizing, like you said, their desires, their wants, what really brings their body and mind pleasure, then the food choices start falling into place. Then the movement choices start falling into place. Then a person knows why they want to feel good and
Mhm.
what makes them feel good. And then they start making various decisions based on that. So
Mhm.
instead of eating what maybe previously made them not feel good or sick or tired, they're choosing other things that give
Mhm.
them energy and don't make their stomach hurt or give them gas, or, you know, all of these things. Instead of punishing themselves with exercise because they think it's the right thing to do, and calories in, calories out, which we all know is a bunch of bullshit, instead of being punitive with themselves, they go to a dance class,
Mhm.
they go for a walk, they go for a bike ride because they enjoy it, and they don't just do something because it's on their to-do list at 5 a.m. and this is what everyone does if they want to be a successful, fit, good human being.
Right.
And so that is, I think, one of the biggest light bulb moments that I even found in my own life. And really, that's kind of how we all come to where we are, right? Is like,
Yeah.
we go through things ourselves, and then somehow we get talked into helping others through
Yes, that
our
was
own
me.
experience, right? And
Correct.
so And so I found that, I was raised in a cult, a very conservative Christian cult where there was no pleasure, sex was bad,
Mhm.
you needed to please your husband, you needed to serve God, and that was it. Like basically, you were a subservient person with no needs or wants. And then I left that when I was 28. And even though I really like cut everything off, I lost my community, a lot of my family, like all of these things. I jumped right into academia. I was like, well, I don't want God, so I'm going to go into science. And
Right.
then that was just another institution full of patriarchy and hierarchy and
Mm.
like you don't really matter, just it's all about science and doing the work, which I'm a hard worker, but it really hasn't been until these past few years here in my mid to late 40s where I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I want to start feeling good. I want to enjoy my life. I want to, do things not because they're expected or I grew up thinking that was the right thing. And really just starting to be curious, be playful, questioning authority,
Mhm.
questioning why my brain tells me I should be doing something. Like for real, should I be doing this, or did someone
Right.
just tell me that like 20 years ago or when I was 6 and it's ingrained so deeply in
Mm.
my brain that I don't even like it's just a default thought. And so I think this is part of the beauty of coming into midlife is we start to look at our mortality, not that we're going to die anytime soon,
No, but
hopefully,
it's a thing.
but it's a thing, right?
Definitely
Especially,
a thing.
we were talking about before we were recording about aging parents. And
Mhm.
I know that one of my parents in particular, like just helping with my dad through various health things and just life is like holding up a mirror of my own mortality.
Right.
And so that's when I think most of us start to ask the questions like, what am I doing with my life?
Mhm.
Where do I want to be? Is this when I'm 80, looking back at this moment in time, am I going to be proud of myself or am I going to be like regretting the decisions I made? And so I really love to be able to look through that lens, almost like a reverse engineering of
Yes.
when we're older, looking
Mhm.
back at our time now.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I say that a lot on the podcast is rocking chair regret, right? Like you don't want
Mm-hmm.
to be 80 looking back and saying, "Oh, I should have wore that crop top when I was 40 because I was hot and I thought I was fat because I had a uterus," right? Like there's this uterus in here, right? So I talk about that often, but something that you had mentioned at the beginning of that topic was women kind of coming to this realization. And in my experience, and I don't know what your thoughts or how you experience this, is that I feel like a lot of times the awakening of sorts, I guess, or when women realize everything is on fire and I need to do something about it,
Right.
in my brain, it tends to um it tends to happen when women are like at the end of a relationship cycle where they're just like they are just done and they shut the door and they finally are like taking care of themselves. That's when it happens a lot. At least what I notice is like, okay, I just got divorced. I was married for 15 years. I never took care of myself. I never did these things. And now I'm ready to do me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I see that happen often. Do you find that as well as you're kind of moving through this work?
Yes, absolutely. And a lot of times it breaks my heart because it's almost as if this person comes to me with a is it too late, or not
Yeah.
even a question but a statement like
Mhm.
it's too late. And I want to say like it is never too late. The earlier we start to move this attention in towards ourselves the better, but it's never too late to start. And so um it really un- unfortunately it had a lot of times it has to come to something like what you just said, like a marriage ending, or a lot of times it's a diagnosis of some kind, or maybe like major issues with a teenager, a child, or yeah, just it. And I wish, and I'm hoping, and I am seeing more and more women not letting it get to that point. And instead of it being reactionary, it being like, oh, what if I'm kind of feeling this way? Maybe not everything's totally great, but it's good. Like I have a good life, but what if it could be extraordinary?
Yes.
Like, what would that look like?
Right.
And sometimes, most of the time, women are like, oh, wait, let me reel that back. I have a good life. Don't be too greedy. Don't be asking for more. What's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
be happy with what you have. How many of us were told that? Don't want too much. And I'm wanting women to be like, I have a really great life. What else can we do to up level it? And I feel like that's really when you start to pour on the sensuality part and the pleasure part. And it's radical. It is radical to do that. And people around you will give you some side eye. Oh, must be nice.
Yeah.
Right. And it is nice. It is nice. And if you stand in that power of, yeah, it is nice. Actually, those other women who might be saying it must be nice, or men, they actually start to come around, because there's nothing more magnetic than a woman who knows what she wants, who knows what brings her pleasure, and who doesn't shrink back from that.
Yes. And I love that you're bringing so much awareness and importance to that, because I like to use myself as sort of the sacrificial lamb, if you will, on social media. And what I mean by that is I like to show many areas of my life, right? I'm a multifaceted human being. I like lots of different things. I'm very direct and bold and run a business, but I'm also very soft and sensual, and I'm a romantic at heart. And so I like to share all those things. And I did a post probably, I don't know, maybe 2 months ago, where I have not shared a lot of my sensual movement and pole dancing in the last probably 3 years, because I've shifted more towards my studio, away from sensual movement and strictly just personal training. Because while I love it and it's very near and dear to my heart, it's more of a novelty from a business perspective, right? To keep a business alive like that, it's a novelty, and it was time. It was time to just be done and move on. So, but it's still a huge piece of who I am and made me who I am and why I am the boss bitch. Okay. Like, if we're being honest. So I shared a video of me pole dancing, and, I was in some cute little lingerie or whatever, and it was tasteful for pole dancing. And I lost 75 followers from sharing.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Don't let the door hit you on the butt on the way out.
Correct.
Sorry.
So initially, when I saw that, because I get a little email that notifies me every week of like my followers and everything, and it said you lost 75 followers, and I went, and then I looked and I'm like, okay, why? And it shows you which posts and then when you lose the followers. And I lost the followers right after I posted that video. And the old me, maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago, would have lost sleep over that. And like, oh my gosh, people don't like me. What did I do? Was this a mistake? I lost this much sleep over it, which is 0. And I just thought that was just such an interesting thing, because I know that people follow me for fitness, but it was like this one thing that I'm trying to share, which is like, hey, this is a very vulnerable piece of my journey. Some of you may not know, but I used to teach pole dancing, and it made me who I am today. And people decided to unfollow, and I'm totally okay with that. Like, the people that love me will stay and know that this is why they're here, for multifaceted content. And those that are just wanting somebody who's going to teach them how to get a 6-pack and do crunches, they can go find a million of those accounts elsewhere. So it's just interesting, because it's very tied to what we're talking about here.
Yeah. And being able to have that vulnerability and to open yourself up and really show your authenticity, in the long run, okay, you lost those 75 followers, but
Mhm.
who knows how many people you're going to gain because from that, or you have,
Yeah.
because they saw this and they're like, oh, that's so interesting. She's not just fitness. Like,
Mhm.
this is fun. This is
Mhm.
playful. I want to learn from her how to be more sexy and how to move my body in a way that not only feels good, but looks good.
Yeah.
And to do it in such a novel way or naughty way or taboo way. I just wrote a post today on scary taboo topics because
Ooh.
it's Halloween. And I was
Oh,
like,
okay.
I said yes.
That's
It started
clever. I
out
love it.
basically like talk about scary taboo things like aging, like kink, like sensuality, and they're scary on their own. But when you put them all together, oh my gosh, watch out! Like you're gonna, it's unacceptable and almost
Did you say
prohibited.
kink?
Yeah,
I love that. Can we go down that path real quick?
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
It's
think
been really powerful in my healing work for sure.
okay, so share your experience with that and tips, just anecdotally what you found, all the things.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it was rooted in my upbringing and how repressed sexually I had always been, even in my early 20s and into my 30s. And I had never ever known anything about kink or BDSM. And then about a year ago, I decided to take a sexual wellness course.
Mm.
This program, it's incredible for anyone listening. It's with Dr. Sarah Sohn. She's out of Florida, but people were from all over the world. And it's called I think she calls it the sex certificate. And she's a
Oh my gosh, I
doctor.
love that.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna need to check her out. Hmm.
So she's a pelvic floor doctor, PT, but she also is in the kink community. And so while during this program, I learned so much. The guest speakers, I mean, it wasn't all on kink, it was on all kinds of sexual wellness, but one whole section was on trauma informed kink. And a lot of times when we think of kink or BDSM, you think of like 50 Shades of Grey, or maybe that's
Right.
kind of weird, or like whips and chains. But if you actually dig a little deeper into the psychology, the philosophy um, of it, it actually can act as a way to heal various traumas and abusive situations you may have been in. And so, yeah, I have another post that I wrote, and it was like, last night I went to a kink party and I got spanked in public for the first time, and you wouldn't believe the comments I got in a great way and messages. I think I lost a lot of people that day too, but I
Yeah.
didn't care.
Amazing.
But when I was young, I don't talk about this a lot, but when I was younger, when I was little, I was beaten with a belt
Mm.
a lot. And so for a very long time, like I never, even if anyone joked about spanking or a belt or anything, I was just like, get the F away from me. Like, I don't want to talk about it. It was very, very triggering.
Yeah.
And a few, I guess in the springtime, it would have been, I decided to go to a local kink club here in LA. And I had gone a couple of times, but this one was, they called it their taster. So it was almost like a county fair with different booths.
Oh my goodness.
And you could like try ropes, getting tied up. You could
Okay.
try getting spanked. You could try flogging. You could try all these different things. There was no like sex going on. It was
Okay.
very quote unquote safe feeling. I went by myself. And it was fantastic because I got to try things in a way that watching it, I was like, oh, there's no way in hell at the beginning I'm going to
Okay.
try any of this.
And
But
you went by
then,
yourself.
yeah.
I love that. That's some
No, I
crazy
don't
shit.
recommend that for everyone. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
this type of person. I'm a very curious, very like,
Same
let's go do
here.
it.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
an Enneagram 7 and a manifesting generator in human design. So
Oh my
those two
goodness.
things together are just like, let's go.
Hmm.
But what was so interesting is it was really empowering, both the flogging experience and there was a professional dominatrix who did the spanking. And I explained to both of them beforehand, like, this is my background and I'm a little bit nervous. And they said, both people said, we get a lot of that.
Mm.
And you're in charge. You can say no. You can say less. You can stop at any time. You can say more. So to really be empowered in that way and to feel like I was in charge. And let me tell you, it was really fun and I really liked it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I have a feeling like this is going to be part of some of the work I start to offer.
Mhm.
I'm not going to be spanking anyone, but like, well, who knows? I
Who
never say
knows?
never,
Who
never say
knows?
never, but just the whole fact of like how this was so helpful for me. It can't, it must be helpful for others, especially so many of us come from religious trauma and purity culture. And
Mm.
even those of us who have done all the therapy work and so much of the somatic work, there's still these little residues that are in us.
Yeah.
That I feel like this work with kink and play
Mhm.
in a sexual way can really help break
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you now when you work with women and I guess walk us through what that looks like. Let's say someone comes to you and they're like, I don't know why I'm here, but I listen to Boss Bitch Radio and you sound like somebody I need to work with. Like, what does that look like for you working with somebody? I know you have some DIY programs and you have Aging Vibrantly, like a master course. Um, do you usually send people those directions first or suggest like, let's do a call and work together to kind of see like what
Yeah.
destination?
I think it mostly depends on um, time, budget, and personality.
Mm,
So some people really like to do self-paced courses on their own, especially when it's certain matters of maybe women's empowerment, or like one of the courses I taught while I was in Italy last year called La Dolce Vita, and
saw that.
it's all about the combination of indulgence and longevity, which
Mm,
was really fun. So if someone's maybe their budget is lower, but they don't like doing one-on-one work or being in group programs, that's a great place to start. For others who want to just deep dive, they're like, I don't want to say at their wits end, because you don't have to be at your wits end, but you just know you need a big
accountability.
change
Yeah.
and accountability,
Mm,
and maybe in a way that's not the typical like health and wellness
mm,
coach route. Then I have programs usually at the beginning. We'll do one-on-one for about 3 months. So
mhm.
that would include a few one-on-one Zoom calls, or if you happen to be in the area I live, we could meet in person, and audio chat access in between calls, which I use Voxer or WhatsApp, depending on where the person lives.
Mm,
I have clients all over the world. And so that gives support in between the calls.
mhm.
Um, Once that's over, I still have people that I've worked with for years who are either just Voxer only, because they just like to have, basically, I'm like in their pocket. And whenever they want to talk, they get on the app and just voice message me. And then I voice message them back. So there's that option. I have some people who will just do maintenance calls maybe once a month.
Mm,
So it's very bespoke in whatever someone needs, and what their personalities are. If they really like one-on-one, they really like Zoom calls versus
mhm.
chatting on an app. Some people love chatting on an app. They hate Zoom calls. Like, don't make them sit down for an hour and talk to you. So,
Mhm.
so yeah. And we always start like I don't want to be poo-pooing exercise, nutrition, and
Yeah.
sleep. Those are major foundations. So we definitely will look at that. If we need to do some food sensitivity testing, we can order that. If there's other testing, or if I need to refer them out to a functional medicine doctor or MD or something like that, I have those resources too. But yeah, typically it's all about desire and what someone truly wants, like getting down, uncovering, unburying, or bringing to the surface what's been buried down for so many years, and then figuring out how to get them to where they want. Whether that's like, maybe they want to feel better in their body, maybe they want to be less exhausted, maybe they want to have the best orgasms of their life because they never really did,
Yeah.
maybe they have kids but never enjoyed sex. Maybe they're nervous because they did just get divorced. They were with one person for 25 years and now they're like, what the F am I supposed to do? I don't know how to start dating again. Not that I'm a dating coach or a relationship coach. That's not what I am. But once we get comfortable in our own bodies, then the rest, like we said earlier, falls into place.
Yeah. No, that's great. What types of like tips or guidance do you usually provide your patients, clients with when it comes to understanding their intuition,
Mm-hmm.
which is one that I feel like as I've gotten older, it's very loud for me, right? Like I know there's just a gut feeling when I'm doing something I know that is not serving my highest good in whatever, whether it's a relationship, it's something I'm going to partake in. But it's taken a lot of, therapy and reading and my own inner work and journaling to start to see my own patterns, right? So I'm very aware of those things, but I know that there are so many women that still are like, I don't know how to find my
Mm-hmm.
inner guide. Like, what does that even
Right.
mean? Right. And so that piece of it, and then also the sensuality component, because that's so exciting for me that somebody else is also shining a light on the importance of that. So it's kind of like a twofold question, but yeah.
I definitely hear it's a twofold question. And for me, like, they're so integrated.
Hmm.
Um, First, the intuition part. So many of us have been cut off at the neck, and we've had to, in order to succeed in this world, in order to survive some things, we've had to disassociate from the neck down. If you're in midlife going through perimenopause, a lot of us are like, what is this body? Because I am like, it is betraying me because it was never like this before and I don't
Mhm.
understand what it is. So to build up that relationship with our intuition, which is housed in our physical body, right? One of the one of the quickest ways or easiest ways, because all those things that you mentioned are incredible, the journaling and the feeling into your body. A lot of times, one of the easiest ways, especially for someone who feels very disconnected, is simply for 2 minutes or 1 minute, like whatever amount of time you have, to sit down, to put your hands somewhere on your body. You can put them on your belly if that's not comfortable, or your heart if that's not comfortable. Even if you just put it like on your thighs, your hands on your thighs, and just ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Not how am I feeling? You could do how later, but just what? Like, is my body tight? Is it loose? Am I hot? Am I cold? Is this shirt scratchy? And that's just a very easy way to start being in your body
Mhm.
and what you're feeling. Then you can say, well, how is that feeling? Is that good? Do I not like it? Is it heavy? Is it light? All of these things. So it's really nothing so woo woo
Yeah.
that you're just like, oh, there's no way I can do that. And then as you start to become more and more comfortable with that, then you can start asking questions. Like, I am a very anti-morning routine person.
Oh,
I
okay.
I am all about rituals, and
Mm,
different mornings ask for different things. And
mhm.
so in the morning I do sit and think, okay, what am I asking for? What is my body needing most? And I will sit there and see how I'm feeling. And some days it's journaling. Some days it's just drinking my coffee and being quiet. Some days it's movement. It just depends. Like, there's a whole toolbox of things, but to really get to know what you desire, as opposed to most women I work with, you probably do too, who are highly driven, have their like 15 to-do lists before 7:30 in the morning when
Yeah.
everyone wakes up.
Guilty as
And
charged.
and then we wonder why we're exhausted
Mm,
and don't feel fulfilled, and it's because we didn't get all these things done. But all these things that are supposed to be self-love and self-nurturing are actually just adding to our stress because we're
yes.
not able to get them all done. So can we back off of that and maybe just pick one or two things and ask our body about itself? And that, it brings in the sensual part, right? So sensuality, so many people think, oh, sensuality equals sexuality, but actually it doesn't at all. Sensuality just really means bringing your life into focus through your senses, right? So,
Mm,
like, what am I tasting? Can I have a nice, beautiful cup of tea? And you feel how warm it is, and the taste in your mouth, and the smell, and how it looks. Maybe it's a really pretty cup.
mhm,
That's a sensual experience,
mhm.
all the way to, you know, having rose petals and candles and music, and your lover, they're like ready to please you. Like, that's a sensual experience too. And
Mhm.
yet they're both like very different, and yet we're using our senses. So can you find a few things to that look beautiful, to your vision? Can you feel something nice? Maybe putting on some oil that you like, or lighting a candle, or listening to some music. So just involving the senses, which means we have to slow down a little usually to do that. And so in that way, you're able to tap into the intuition because you're becoming more sensual and you're
Mhm.
learning what your body's telling you it likes.
Yeah. Wow. That makes so much sense. It's, yeah, it's funny because I feel like I'm more aware of it now than I ever have been. But to what you were saying about like the sensuality being ingrained everywhere, you just really have to slow down to be able to appreciate it. We were somewhere a couple weeks ago and I was watching this man make pizza, and I was so just impressed by everything, like the dust coming off his fingers and the pressing of the dough and how he swirled the sauce. And I was like, this is so sensual. Like, I was
Right?
loving every second of the pizza creation. And it was a sensual experience, and it had zero to do with sex. It was just being very present. The smell of the basil, the smell of the pizza sauce, the lighting that came down, all of it. And I do feel like being engulfed in sensual movement and sensual dance and really teaching it for so many years has forced me to really turn on all of my senses when I'm being intimate with my partner and things like that. So it's so much more of an experience. But I think more women um, being involved with just themselves, the process of, putting on the oil and enjoying your face routine. Like, there's so many little things that I used to dread now that I'm like, no, I enjoy this now because I'm taking care of my body and my skin. And it's like, I make it a ritual, right? It's
Yeah,
more of an event, right?
exactly.
But it nurtures me, and I feel more in tune with who I am as a woman to be able to slow down and do those things.
I love that. And then the next natural progression, you might say, is really taking that into a self pleasure practice, which I think is one thing all my clients learn and do eventually, because once you start knowing how to, what you like, what you don't like, that is so important way before you bring anyone else in.
Mhm.
And so that might involve toys, which
Mhm.
I love talking about those. That
Yeah.
might involve certain oils, that might involve certain smells, that might, there's so many different things that but where I, as an individual, am the focus, because so many times when we're with a partner, we can't help but wanting to please the partner. Like, how are they feeling? Are they enjoying it as much as I am? I'm really worried. Maybe they're not enjoying it. Why is that happening? Why is that not happening? Whatever it is, instead
Mhm.
of really being present in our body. So when we learn to be present in our body, which starts with these simple tasks of enjoying our coffee, enjoying watching someone make pizza, enjoying putting our skincare on at night, all the way to enjoying, like, this is, I was just having conversations last week with a group of women on like our favorite vibrators, right? And
Mhm.
so making it as normal, talking about self pleasure as
Yeah.
normal as talking about what do you like in your coffee,
Yeah. I love
because
that.
this is going to make society a much better place with a bunch of
Oh, for
women
sure.
who are feeling good in their bodies, and that just radiates out into the world.
Yes, I'm a little sad that we're talking about this towards the tail end of the podcast because I do believe that it's such an important topic with women understanding self-pleasure and not feeling ashamed about that. Um, I've spent probably the last, 10 years being single for the most part, for the better part of 10 years, but the last probably 2 years where I've been more sexually explorative and more open. And something I've come to realize is when I'm with a partner and I'm focused on my pleasure, it heightens the experience, right? If I'm like, no, I want you to do this, or here, use this, or no, that's too rough, or this is go softer. And I'm like verbalizing what it is that I want,
Mm.
it
That's
elevates the
hot.
sexual experience to a whole nother level. And let me tell you, he's not worried about getting, like he is just like, okay, yes, yep.
Exactly.
And so I urge women to step outside their comfort zones with that. And I would love more, for you to maybe give us a few more tips on the self-pleasure stuff, because I think that that's something that is definitely not discussed enough, but it is very, it has some great rewards aside from sexual
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, and we can always have a part 2, of course,
Most
and,
definitely.
I would say, 2 things. 1, you don't have to start with, like, a big dildo if that seems scary, so
Yes,
let's just get, I think this will be your after dark episode,
most definitely. I'm excited for that.
but 2, like, even just starting with a nice oil and doing some breast massage.
Mhm.
Like that, just we don't realize how much tension we hold in our muscles around our chest, and really letting our hearts just open.
Mhm.
Just doing that as a start of a self pleasure, especially if you might be a little bit like embarrassed or confused or not sure, like that's a
Ashamed,
good
yeah.
place to start. Ashamed, exactly. And then when you're ready, there's so many toys depending on what you want, and feel free to DM me, like, don't, I will give you some recommendations based on what you're looking for. But to give yourself time. I know
Mhm.
my biggest thing was I was like, okay, 2 minutes in, what's going on, I got shit to do,
Yeah, exactly.
and instead being like, no, okay, I'm gonna actually set a timer so I make sure, like, 20 minutes. And it's not 20 minutes of like going at it. It's just easing into it and putting on the
Yeah.
music and putting on the oil and making the environment as if you were taking yourself out on this beautiful date, because you
Mhm.
are. And really, you know, making sure you have uninterrupted time, to invest in yourself so that you can start to realize what you like and what you don't like.
Mhm.
And that just comes with practice, like anything else, time and practice.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a perfect spot to give people some excitement to go do their homework after they've listened to this podcast. Now I want to go masturbate. Was that too much? Oh well. But
I
no,
love
I
it.
mean,
Oh my God.
super appreciate you, opening up this conversation and sharing conversations that I think, again, need to be as casual and normal as, wow, it's really cold today outside, with your girlfriends, where you can have, and in your partner too, these conversations that are vulnerable, and not feel ashamed to be able to have them. Right. I think it's a huge part of who we are as human beings. And the fact that we are stifling so much of that is really sad, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I think what you brought up too is when we do bring this up to our partner or our lover or whoever we're with, um, they, even though we might have a little trepidation around it, a little bit of embarrassment around it, they're going to be super excited
Yeah.
that you're curious and exploring.
Mhm.
And they're going to do whatever they can to support that, which could be leave you alone
Yeah.
or join the party depending on what what you're needing. So yeah, it really starts with us and being brave and courageous and knowing we're deserving and worthy of that desire and pleasure.
Most definitely. We're most certainly worthy. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Dr. Nicole. Now, can you give everybody um, any info as far as where they can find you? What
Yeah.
programs maybe you have that would be a great first step for somebody that's listening?
Yeah, I think the best way to reach me is probably on Instagram. My handle is Dr. Nicole Marcione. So just DR and then my name. And on that link in bio, there I have a mini workbook on sensuality and midlife. It's a freebie. So if you want to download it, there's like 10 tips to bring more sensuality in your life, and there's some questions around it so you can do some journaling. And like you mentioned, I do have some self-paced courses. One is called the Sensual Sage. It's really about women's empowerment and aging all around. Sage stands for sophistication, audaciousness, genius, and epic. So
That's
we go through those
great.
four
Yeah.
things, and that's a lot of fun. And yeah, I have a master course that actually we're starting this coming week called Aging Vibrantly. That information is up as well. But I would, and one-on-one work always available. But please just DM me, even if it's
Yeah.
to say hello, to ask me questions. This has been just such a delight. Thank you so much for reaching out.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
never
I'm so
know how
glad.
people are going to connect, and yeah, this
Definitely.
is a pleasure.
This was really fun. And we will link everything up in the show notes and the YouTube description and everything as well, so everyone can find you. But let's just keep doing the good work. Let's keep on keeping on and spreading the word to more women out there and just creating orgasm glows everywhere.
Oh my
Please,
gosh, thank you
please, and
so
thank you.
much. Exactly.
Yes.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, you have a great day until
Okay,
next
you
time,
too.
and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.